Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regular board meeting of November 20th, 2018. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you please do roll call?
Mr. Colwell?
Here.
Mr. Lilly's here. Mr. Roman?
Here.
Liz Smith? Andrea Voorhees?
Present.
Mr. Paul?
Here.
Mr. Ruggles?
Here.
Thank you. Looking for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a couple recommendations on the agenda. The item 11E, which is the 2019 budget approval, to move that up along with the General Appropriations Act. Also to create an item 11I, which would be the Pollock Agreement. To create item J of the library agreement. Is you want that on there, Rick?
No, actually.
Okay, we'll leave that off then.
I think we're going to remove a couple of them.
Remove the Huron Valley School District item G, remove that from the agenda. And also the Redstone Planning Proposal 11C is to remove from the agenda. Just a comment, Mr. Supervisor, after consent agenda, if I could have a few minutes, I'd
Certainly.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the stated changes.
Have a motion, looking for support?
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Have it, thank you.
Except where were we going to move item E and what's the other one?
Item E went up
9E.
to...
Up to A?
No, 11E went to 9E.
Oh, up in the
It should
resolution.
have been
They'll be
conjoined.
both combined together.
Oh, I see.
It should have been conjoined.
On that main monitor? I can't, because I don't have
You good?
Okay.
Okay, at this time, we have the approval agenda. At this time, we go to public comment. You have 3 minutes to state any business that you'd like that is generally not on the agenda. You just come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Anyone at this time, public comment?
Oh.
Very good. Moving on. We'll move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda, which is a list of bills, expenses, disbursements, budget amendments, special assessment tax rolls, assessing appointments, various reports. Mr. Clerk,
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
a motion to approve. Looking for support?
Support, and I'd like to ask something, and it's not anything specific here, but in the building department, they used to give us a kind of a countdown as to how much we received in building permits, dollar amounts, so that we could compare against the expenses. And I found that very valuable in the past, and we don't
I
do
believe
that anymore.
I'll find out, but I believe that still exists. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not in the report, though, so.
Okay. I have a motion, I have support. All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
excuse me.
Sorry, just one
Mr. Ruggles.
comment. Yeah.
If you're going to question something, we need to remove it from the consent agenda.
Okay, just a question for you then. I see you've got some appointments here to the Board of Review. I don't know if you'd like to, announce those or just keep them on the consent agendas.
It's a good question.
Your call.
You want to make a motion, if we discuss them, we need to remove them. Okay.
Not so much discussion, it's just announcing.
I tip, any conversation regarding any item in the consent agenda needs to be removed.
Okay. Would you like to remove the appointments from the consent agenda?
Second?
Well, we had a motion to pass it.
Right.
So
No, we have to-
take that motion off the floor.
No, this is,
Maybe a
this can
second?
be a motion, this can be a motion with the other motion still on the floor, can't it? To remove that from the
Okay,
table?
we didn't second it. He didn't second it. Okay.
Well, the motion was to pass the consent agenda. This is to remove an item, so.
Oh. That's okay.
We'll talk later. I think you can make a motion inside an emotion, but we'll just talk later.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so I have motion, I have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for passing the consent agenda. Mr. Lilly, the floor is yours.
Supervisor,
I will. Terry.
I would like to talk a little bit about Amy Burton, our secretary. She's been our recording secretary for the Township Board for the last 10 years. Amy has worked for this board, and she does an awful lot for us. She's attended over 150 regular and special board meetings, over 300 hours in this room documenting board members' motions and township history. She spent countless hours at home making sure that her work is accurate and professional. And this has been no easy task for her, especially when our conversations get lively and long. And I want to thank Amy for the work that she's done for the township, and let her know that her work is graciously appreciated. So I'd like to present this to Amy.
Sorry, I wanted to stand for her. I think she's great.
Amy, thank you.
Well, thank you. Very wonderful.
That's for all those, did you get that, Amy?
I got this. I'll make sure I put this in bold letters. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
She's not leaving, is she, Terry?
Yes.
Yeah.
This will be her
didn't know
last
that.
meeting with us.
Oh, my.
10
Oh.
years.
10 years, wow.
Thank you, Amy, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item, excuse me, just for the interjection, just to name the few individuals who were appointed to the Board of Review members, which is a 2-year term by state law. It'd be Gerald Jessup, Kim McFadden, Rita LaFave, and the alternate is Nick Gabrowski.
Thank you.
All right? So we got them out there in the public. All right? So there's more than one way to skin a cat around an
right.
attorney. You just got to figure out how to do it. Okay. Excuse me. Item number 7, A, the approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of October 12th, 2018.
Mr. Supervisor, I move approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of October 12th, 2018.
I have, excuse me, I have a motion looking for support. Support. Motion, support, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, thank you. 7B, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 16th, 2018.
I have one just clarification on page 7 under H. My own comments. I just wanted to clarify that the document, it says the 8-page document that she is seeing is for the first time today, and she'd like a chance to review it. I just want to clarify that it was given to all of us at that time, so it just wasn't me that missed something. It happened to be on our desk. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, any other comments? Corrections? Okay, I have motion looking for support.
I don't think you had a, did you have a motion?
Not yet.
All right, I'll motion to approve the board minutes for
As a-
October 16th.
As amended.
As amended,
As amended.
I'll support that.
Support by Liz, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Moving on. I beg everybody's patience, but I am suffering a cold like so many other people are right now. I'm actually feeling a little bit better, but not a whole lot. Next item is 8A, which is our Community Development Block Grant
Make a
funding.
motion, Mr. Supervisor, to open public hearing.
Well, I would like to do that in 1 second, if you give me 1 second. As a HUD entitlement county, Oakland County receives funds on a formula base to meet national objectives of 4 federal grants, one of which is a Community Development Block Grant, which we are going to hear public input for our 2019 application tonight. The overall goal of the CDBG funds is to strengthen neighborhoods by supporting local revitalization projects, home improvement, and public services for senior citizens, low-income persons, families, disadvantaged youth, and disabled residents. White Lake will be submitting applications to the county in December for the 2019 CDBG funds. The maximum number of projects allowed is 4. The township plans to submit applications for minor home repairs, senior services, Meals on Wheels, youth services, Huron Valley Youth Assistance, and public facility improvement project for the senior center, of which we have a much-needed new roof to be done. I will now take that motion.
Yep, motion to open public hearing.
I have a motion to open public hearing. Looking for support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. The hearing is now open. The board will hear any public comments on the 2019 Community Development Block Grant application, if any. At this time, I would request that only the participants who wish to speak on this and not the board members do so. Anyone from the crowd that would like to speak? Stand and be recognized, sir.
My name is Brent Davidson. I'm here representing Haven. Haven is at 801 Vanguard. And I'd like to tell the council, before we get started, I'd like to just give a few fact sheets to share with you. So I want to begin by thanking the township for all the help and support you've given to Haven in the past. As you know, Haven is an agency that works with the issues of domestic violence and sexual assault. Your support last year enabled us to serve 56 individuals and 26 crisis calls from White Lake Township citizens, and we ask that you continue that support again. Just to give you a little background, through our comprehensive work, we serve to break the silence that has kept the crimes of domestic violence and sexual assault behind closed doors. Our agency is reaching out to you for the support you provided in the past. In the past, you've given us a block grant for $10,000. And please remember that federal government presumes that domestic violence victims are considered to be low income and therefore qualify for inclusion in block grant public service requests. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. And to be recognized.
Gail Ennis, the caseworker for Huron Valley Youth Assistance. We are located in the Brooks Center at 1000 Hill Road. I want to thank the board for their ongoing support for youth services. And with the block grants in the past, when they've been granted to youth assistance, we have utilized those for young people who are less fortunate and at risk for delinquency or other social, emotional, and economic needs of having issues that might escalate into something such as juvenile delinquency and the like. What activities that says funded typically are summer camp programs for individuals that wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity, and for youth enrichment and skill building programs that are activities all that involve adult supervised structured free time activities where young people learn a skill, get tutoring, go for substance abuse awareness. We're also partnering with some other community groups to try to do more programs regarding the vaping, which has become the issue within the school district area. And all of this is in hopes of boosting a young person's self-esteem and preventing issues from escalating. We appreciate, the support that you've continued to give us. Typically, the skill building activities are programs that are affiliated with local Parks and Rec programs, the youth enrichment and recreation programs of Huron Valley Schools, the YMCA in Milford, and other local programs that are provided by local businesses. Once again, we appreciate all of the help and support you've given us, and I know that this is a great need. Last year, we didn't receive the funds, and we've had a large number of families calling and inquiring, and we try to stretch those dollars by looking for discounts from some of the providers of the services, as well as collaborating with other agencies, and when possible, ask the family to give some monetary investment into the program, even if it's just $5 or $10, so that they are buying in and making some contribution, so that we can stretch the money as far as possible to help the most children in the area. I appreciate the time and look forward to continuing to work closely with you to provide youth services to the children in White Lake and our school district.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment? At this moment then, I'd like to take a motion to close public comment.
Mr. Supervisor, motion to close public comment.
I need support. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment on the 2019 CDBG block grant is now closed. Moving on to item 9A, the resolution 18-035, the community block grant development application. I will take the time to just do a brief reading of that. Whereas Oakland County is preparing an annual action plan to meet application requirements for the Community Development Block Grant Program and other Community Planning and Development CDPP program, and whereas Oakland County has requested CDBG eligible projects from participating communities for inclusion in the action plan, and whereas the Township of White Lake has duly advertised and conducted a public hearing on November 20th, 2018 for the purpose of receiving public comments regarding the proposed use of PY 2019 Community Development Block Grant Funds CDBG, an approximate amount of $71,193. And whereas the Township of White Lake found that the following projects meet the federal objective of the CDBG program and are prioritized by the community as high priority need. Account number 771227, minor home repair, $45,193. Account number 731696, public facility and improvements to senior center, $10,000. Account 731712, public service senior services, Meals on Wheels, $9,000. And account number 732185, public service youth services, for $7,000. Mr. Powell.
Yes, I see that.
Therefore, it be resolved that the Township CDBG application is hereby authorized to be submitted to Oakland County for inclusion in the Oakland County's annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that the supervisor is hereby authorized to execute all documents regarding agreements or contracts which result from the application of Oakland County. Any questions from the board? Mr. Ruggles.
Just one question. I had a question about Haven, quick one. This is just for Oakland County, these figures on here? Yeah. Wow, it's unbelievable. It's 3.4 million was your income for 2017. That's incredible. Yeah. I just couldn't believe it, just for Oakland County. That's great. Just so everybody knows, I thought that's a ton. That was it.
I was just wondering if there was any follow-up information yet on the email the board received, if we're able to redistribute some funds to Haven.
There is a possibility that there may be some other potential funding sources from
Right,
a
do we have any further
reprogramming.
information yet on that?
I do not have it as of yet. I will when we close out this year, which we haven't done yet. So, any other questions or comments? Okay. One of the things that I would like to state is that I know that there are worthy causes, and it has come to the attention of this board over the last a couple of years of the youth assistance program. Somewhere along the line, there was some assistance done, but I think that's a little before my time in this position in the past. And it may be that from time to time, there are various very deserving groups and organizations, and we may have to go on a rotational basis. It is very difficult for this board to make decisions when we look at these funds, as we know they are limited. It's a little tough to take away Meals on Wheels. That's a tough one, okay? It's a little tough to tell somebody when their roof is leaking or their furnace isn't working and they got a couple of older folks or kids that we can't do anything for them, okay? And the other choices aren't easy. We have public buildings that we have to maintain. We take care of our seniors ourselves and our community. This community has made a large investment in its seniors and continues to do so. And persons that live here have come to accept that that's just part of our responsibility as a community, that this is what we're supposed to do. And we're supposed to try to take care of the folks as best we can. In the public youth services, there are multiple organizations. This one is, I'm going to say, directly connected to White Lake because of the services it provides. And in some regard, there's a possibility that we may be able to defer or deter other problems in the future that could be problems that Haven deals with if we can get at the youth, and we may be able to help them. We will make an effort to look and see if there are funds available for reprogramming, so I would like to stay in touch with you with that. And you can talk to Trish. Mike's actually aware of it, and we know it. So these decisions are not easy decisions. So I wish we could do more than we can, but we have to deal with what we have right now. But again, I believe we'll be doing certain things potentially on a rotational basis. Any questions from the board members? Any further questions?
Mr. Supervisor, I think we should just clarify for the public that we're only allowed to pick 4 projects. For
I
this.
did state that in the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it is a hard case when we have 4.
It's a tough job, tough decision. No other comments from the board? And I would like to seek a motion to Mr. Roman.
I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 18-035, approving the 2019 Community Development Block Grant.
I have a motion looking for support.
Support.
Motion for support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. We will be in touch. Okay. Next is item 9B, the resolution 18032, special reassessment role for Nordic Drive water system improvements, or SID. Janine, do you care to enlighten us?
So the Nordic Drive water assessment for just the water main, when the bills came in, there was not enough to cover through the SAD, the funds. There wasn't enough in the funds, so we had to reassess. It was under 10%, so we were able to do it without a new hearing, but we did notice all of the people on Nordic Drive. So they all received letters, which you received a copy of the letter also. And I'm suffering from a cold too, so.
There's be a lot going around. Okay, so the Nordic Drive's water system improvements is complete. The bills have been paid. The original total assessment for the 6 taxpayers assessed was $84,254.52. The total costs were $91,508.03. This is an overage of 8% of the total assessment. State law requires that we reassess the property owners in order to get this money returned back. No hearing is required for the assessment under 10%. Letters are mailed as described by our assessor, and the residents informed of the increase. And a sample letter was attached and sent out. So we are looking. Any questions from the board? Mr. Powell.
I didn't know if any staff or whether or not Janine would know, Did this overage come did they run into a problem? It seems like it was a pretty straightforward project, and we had contingencies and everything else involved in that. What was the issue on that? Do we know?
I can't really tell you what the specifics were
Okay.
at that time when this was done, because it's obviously been some time
Right,
ago.
a year ago, right?
Janine, do you remember what a specific?
On this one, I don't have any idea why there were overages. Sometimes it just happens that way. On the sewer, they did both sewer and water. The sewer was under, and the water was over, so it just worked out that way.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately,
We try, obviously, not to have this happen,
Right.
but unfortunately, we were caught on this one.
this, it's a small project, but unfortunately, like I say, there's variables here that we had no control over. Any other questions from me? Yes, Mr. Lully.
Just for the record, and I know the, probably Act 188 does not permit us, but on that project, there was an overage on one of the sewer water projects and the underage on the other one, and I find it hard to believe that we can't blend those together, that we're charging people, now that we know the total cost of that project, that we're not able to blend those together and only charge them for the overage. But as I say, I understand the law doesn't permit us to do that, but I think we need to be a little more careful in the future when we're doing some of those, particularly overage and unders, that
Well,
we're
there's
not charging those people money that they're going to get back 10 years from now, when we find that most of the construction projects like this, that people are going to be selling those properties and rebating the money back probably to another owner rather than the owner that was deserving to put up the money to start with. So I just wanted to make that as a comment.
Agreed, Mr. Lane, and we did have some conversation at length about that, but unfortunately, the way that the law is drafted, there is a perfect example for potentially one of our new elected officials to craft some legislation that would allow communities in general throughout the state of Michigan to, I'm sure this is not something that has only happened in White Lake.
No, it isn't. You're right.
And would allow a balance, so to speak, to be made, and then if there was any deficiency, then it could be, one fund could supplement the other. And I believe it's worthy legislation to be looked at, and we may pursue that. Okay, that being said, I have the resolution 18-032. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Mr. Roman?
We'll make a motion to approve resolution 18-032, confirming the reassessment role for Nordic Drive water system.
Support?
A motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's have it. Thank you. 9C, the resolution 18033, 2019 property exemption for property taxes. Janine, would you care to address that? Explain that to them?
simple.
Yep.
Every year, you have to renew the resolution
Yep.
in order for us to use it next year for anybody that files for a hardship exemption.
Under the poverty law, which has a ceiling. Size of family, poverty guidelines, like, for example, a size of family 1 is $12,140, and a family of 8 is $42,380. And it has a sliding scale from there out. So, and this is passed every year by this board. Any question by any of the board members? Looking for a motion for resolution 18-033.
So moved, Mr. Supervisor.
Motion, Mr. Powell, support, Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Item 9D, Resolution 18-034, declaring the township intention to establish a special assessment district for Settlers Point. Settlers Point is a subdivision that is a number of years old, that has a stormwater detention system that is in dire need of attention. And Mr. Potter, would you care to elaborate?
Yes, thank you. In spring of this year, we received a call in my office about a flooding complaint near what I now understand is the detention pond at Settlers Point. So we started an investigation found that the stormwater management system at Settlers Point contains 3 detention ponds. 2 of the detention ponds were severely overgrown and flooded to the overflow level. We were not able to, at that time, assess the condition of the piping because due to the flooding. So we contacted the Homeowners Association, as it's part of their master deed to repair and maintain this system. It's part of their private property and common element to their subdivision. So I've been working with these folks throughout the summertime, and they're having a really hard time getting bids that are apples to apples comparisons. They've brought in the original engineer that designed the system, Brad Thompson, and we were working with Brad to try to develop a plan, but it just really wasn't able to come to fruition. So about a month ago, I met with these folks at one of their neighborhood association meetings to talk about this, and we went over some what we thought were ballpark figures at the time, and they took a vote and I believe voted to approve asking the township to handle this project for them. Now, since that time, we have sent our engineering company, Johnson & Anderson, over there. They sent an inspector out who took some basic measurements, a lot of photographs to try to get an idea. They came up with this cost estimate based on a recent project in Bloomfield and another project in Independence Township. And these cost estimates were much higher than these folks originally considered. So at this time, what we're asking for, I believe, is the township to resolve to intend to create an SAD on behalf of these folks so that they can assess all the properties that receive benefit of this system, not just the ones that are identified in their master deed. There are at least 4 properties and potentially a few more that could be assessed that are directly connected to this storm system. Also, I have an engineering services agreement that we would like the township to authorize the supervisor to sign to begin work. This project is going to require, for us to complete this, in my opinion, properly, a survey of the site so that we can quantify what needs to be done to bring the site from its current condition back to its original design condition. That's going to require a bid specification preparation. We'd like Johnson & Anderson to manage the bid process and receive bids. We would like Johnson & Anderson to conduct part-time inspection of the construction and manage the construction process, and then review the as-built drawings and these things that we do on every project that we do. So before I ask the board to do this, I would ask you, these folks are here tonight, and I mean, the last time we spoke, we were prepared to go forward with this, but I think I'd like to open that up to them to, to make sure that this is what they still intend. These people have been more than helpful. They're all great folks, and, we've been working with them, like I said, since spring, trying to move this thing forward without being heavy-handed. And they're just running into a lot of roadblocks. Their project is small. They're unable to attract the kind of companies that are going to be capable and qualified of doing this work. Whereas I feel like Johnson & Anderson preparing a bid is going to speed this process up, and we'll get qualified bidders.
I find it very interesting that, in what's going on, that with the amount of work that is actually happening in the industry, construction industry right now, in particular earth moving and site prep and things of the sort, it does not surprise me at all This is a rather challenging site to work on and go where the larger jobs are, and it is difficult. And it's just another echoing of the shortage that we have here of qualified, skilled labor in the state of Michigan.
We're finding that to be the case even with municipal projects, that, oftentimes I can't get anybody out to do the work. It's very difficult. I mean, building is at an all-time high, I think, right now. At least it feels like it. And, it's very hard to get anybody to, take on these smaller projects.
Okay.
This is where township rapport with local contractors is invaluable, because they'll do some work for us and they might not for someone else for this size. So yeah.
Exactly. So that is the opportunity that the township has to enter into from time to time, and it's nice to build those relationships. Mr. Lee, you have a question?
Along with the special assessment district costs, I know we always talk about this continually, but we always seem to talk about special assessments and we talk about the J&A contracts, but I don't see anything in the paperwork here that shows that there are any other fees that normally the township would charge to a special assessment district that are part of these costs that have been either not talked to or talked with the residents, and I wonder if that has been part of the conversation and part of approval to move towards special assessment. Those costs have been talked
If
about.
I could address maybe that just very quickly, because I think what I have to say might address that. Certainly, Terry's referring to bond counsel, sale of bonds, administrative costs, all of that stuff. And I guess I have a question, and maybe our counselor would help me. It's my understanding that we're being asked to pass a motion of intent to establish a special assessment district.
Correct.
Normally, we don't have engineering costs, we don't have construction costs and everything at this stage, because we haven't, in theory, developed any costs or any way to forward costs and have costs reimbursed at this time. So I'm thinking just out loud here that it would be inappropriate at this particular time to have all those numbers, and so really Aaron has provided us with more information than we need at this time. It's very valuable information, and I'm going to suggest, in order to go to the next step, which is the formal public hearing to establish the special assessment district, and the owners need to have some handle on what the costs might be, and that's kind of where Terry's referring to. I would be very hesitant to approve an entire contract by J&A, because what we're looking for is just enough time on their part to establish what those costs might be, and maybe not do a full-blown survey and everything at this time. That would be done after the establishment of the SAD, but before the assessment roll being confirmed. And so we have to be a little bit careful not to get the cart before the horse and approve too much tonight before the assessment.
I'd like to comment on that if I may.
Yes, Mr. Potter.
So we've done that, and that's what this preliminary cost estimate is. Janine has also met with myself and the association to talk about all the appropriate additional costs. What we would like to do at this time is pass an intent resolution to start the process of creating the SAD.
Has to be done.
Now, for us to create the bid package and request bids so that we can actually get an actual cost in this 2-month period, presumably two public hearings, 2 months, we will need to spend some money of the townships to, like I said, we need to do a survey on this site, quantify what needs to be done to bring this project into compliance. So we're kind of getting stuck in this which came first, chicken or the egg situation here a little bit. And I feel that we've done everything that we could do. As you know, we don't have a revenue source for stormwater. That's why these things are a requirement in the master deed. So I guess I'm asking for the board's advice on how to proceed on this. If we don't want to spend money that may not be assessed. I'd also like to point out that this is a requirement of their master deed. So whether or not, like I said, these folks have been extremely helpful and they want us to help them. Now, we probably eventually, or have in the past, will run into folks that don't want us to help them, and then I'd be coming to you with the same intent resolution, asking the township to pass an assessment because of non-compliance. But that's not the case here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware. But I mean, I really can't get much more detailed than this without spending more money on Johnson and Anderson surveying and bid preparation. So, I mean, if we can, I'd like to break out how many of these costs out of this that we're feeling comfortable to move forward. 'Cause I need to have some work done before we can get to where we need to be.
Exactly, yeah. It is a case of which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Can I
Yes,
also?
Counsel.
I guess I have a couple of questions, Aaron. If they're asking you to do it, is there a reason they haven't petitioned? Because it sounds like you're not sure how many people are on board. We can go through this process and you might have too many people objecting. So if they go through the petition process, you'll at least have a good percentage of people who want to move forward, rather than the township initiating the SAD and then meeting resistance.
So they did take a vote and submitted that to us with this letter. Like I say, I was at this meeting. But this was before we got this cost estimate, this preliminary estimate from Johnson and Anderson. So,
And then my follow-up question is, it's not uncommon for the township to contract with an association who's responsible for this to pay those costs up front. I don't know how much those costs would be, but that way you're not absorbing a cost you might not end up developing. They do have it in their master deed. It is a requirement of theirs.
Correct.
You can sue them for not doing it and force them to do it. So taking this route is obviously helping them, but you also don't want to put yourself in a position that you're spending money that you may never recoup.
yeah, so,
And that was my point, in that after the establishment of the SAD, then we have the means of then assessing for costs that that have been included in that SAD, preliminary or final. Up to this time, I don't think we would have any legal right whatsoever, and so you'd have to come up with a line item to me, say, which line item are you going to take from the township in order to pay these costs if we never get reimbursed for them?
that's correct. However, to establish the SAD, I believe I actually have to have an amount that
No,
we're...
no, that is incorrect. Prior to the assessment roll, you need to have an amount, but just an approximate. Actually, what you have here, along with the extra costs that Terry was talking about, is all you need just to give them some idea. Before you go out for bids, or before you, I'm sorry, not before you go out for bids, but before you approve the assessment roll, then you have to have it nailed down. You have to have the bids in, you have to know what the precise costs are, you have to advertise and tell each one of them exactly what their payment's gonna be. But at this point in time, it's just informational just for them. So you're getting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Well, I'd like to answer Lisa's original question about why these folks have asked us to do this. And one point was that their master deed spells out which properties can be assessed. However, in this case, there are other properties that benefit from this system. That was one of the reasons. Because of the costs of this project, or the projected costs of this project, the more properties that can be assessed are going to keep these costs spread out for the individual. And like I said, there's 4 properties in this neighborhood that are not part of the condo association that were owned by the original owner. They live on Settlers Point, on High Point Trail. They receive benefit from this storm system. However, they've, written themselves out of the requirement to help pay for the cost of it.
Are they included in this intent letter?
They are.
Okay, good, because we would have to inform them of that, of course.
And then the other thing was, we would ideally like to begin construction of this over the winter time and have this restoration completed in early spring before the flood season. And that's partially my fault. Like I said, we're trying to create a rapport with the associations around, we have some fantastic associations, some wonderful neighborhoods in White Lake Township. We don't want to be heavy-handed and go in and say, you have to do this by 90 days. Those are the types of things that I want to avoid. And so, we've let this go on maybe a little too long now, and, now these folks are, wanting to avoid to have flooding problem in the spring.
Mr. Supervisor, this is a perfect example of, you and I have talked, and the clerk and the treasurer and I have talked about board-initiated SADs. I'm a major proponent of that, because to put people through the need to go out and do petitions, I know the attorneys hate this because it really puts us into a hard position if in fact we end up with resistance. But it is a real pain to go out and get petitions signed by everyone in the community, and that's involved, all the benefiting parcels. So I'm in total favor of this, and I would vote for this, with the provisions that everybody knows that I'm not in favor of spending township funds to create the assessment or create the project as presented here tonight. So I guess I would have no problem if J&A can come up with a cost of saying just to assist to get to the point to, well, we've already expended funds by them, correct?
Correct.
So
Which is the case on all SADs, by the way.
In order to
And
do
no matter
the
what kind
initial-
of feasibility study we come up with,
yeah.
we spend money that we don't have a source to recover.
And
It's the cost of doing business.
And I understand that you have to have some idea to present to the people how much it's going to cost. But the really big expenses occur after the establishment of the SAD and not before that. And I'm in favor of this project.
Well, the simple point that I believe that it's in their their condominium association bylaws that they have to do this. That the township's in a position to basically enact enforcement if we have to.
Yeah, but it doesn't give us the right to charge them to do
No,
it.
I understand.
That's the problem.
I understand that. I understand
It
that.
makes them responsible.
Right.
And I love the counselor's recommendation, if they have any funds in their savings account for this,
Yeah.
that they've maybe accrued over the years, that they can front that money for those costs.
That we do not know. Your president or treasurer here of your association?
Yes, they are here.
We have a reserve. Wouldn't cover the $18,000 that J&A had.
Could you identify yourself, sir?
My name is Rick Brown, and I'm just one of the residents. I'm on the board. I'm the vice president of the association. We wouldn't have the funds to cover the full amount that J&A has requested. You could look at the proposal that they made and determine what part of that proposal, what part of that cost is the cost to do the surveys, the cost to do the bids. It's nowhere near the $18,000, the $18,800 that was the total cost. So the initial amount of money that have to be spent would be less.
Mm-hmm.
How much less? Aaron's in a position to be able to answer that question with time to go through the detailed proposal and pick out the line items that are, the preliminary work.
Okay, so would you folks consider to come forward with some money to contribute towards this cost?
I guess we'd have to go through that with the members of the association. We can't make that call.
Correct.
Over a certain amount, it's got to be a vote of the
Okay, 1 second, Counselor.
It could be something along the lines of a non-refundable deposit, because that's essentially what you would be doing.
Yeah.
So you're absorbing that risk, that you'll be paying that money, and if the project goes through, you can be reimbursed. If the project doesn't go through, you're out the money, not the township.
Right, I like that.
Yeah.
Let me also just say that the association, 33 homes. And we're looking at a project when you had all the costs, and we have talked with Janine, and I think we have a pretty good handle on what the costs are. We don't know what the bond part is, if the bond's involved. But we know what the service charges for the township and most of the other costs that are involved. And when you rack this thing up, it's about $150,000 for 33 homes. You talked about us making the appeal or the petition. that would preclude the other 4 homes from being involved.
No,
That's one of the reasons we wanted to.
that's not correct. It would preclude them to be involved if we didn't establish the SAD, but 51% of the people or the residents within the district can force the other 49% to participate, or this board can. So those can be rolled in, but again, that puts a lot of burden on you guys to have petitions signed and everything, and I'd like to not have to do that. So,
Probably.
yeah.
I mean, you know, Aaron's been really good through this process. It's a huge project.
Yeah.
It turns out to be a very huge project. It takes expertise
Yeah.
that we don't have. So, I mean, we'd have, if it's not J&A, we'd have to hire whether it's Thompson or anybody else, we'd have to spend $18,000.
Right. And then your engineer would have to give it to our engineer for it to be
review.
approved,
I
so
don't want to do the same thing he's proposing.
Yeah.
better off where you're at.
The other problem is, I mean, you're talking somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 per household here. And we have a hard enough time collecting membership dues on a quarterly basis, let alone getting that much money up front. We're certainly not gonna get a loan. So, I mean, we can't fund this on our own. So this is me talking now. This is in the association. I don't see any other way of doing this, and I can't see why this wouldn't go forward, assuming you guys agree this is the best way to approach this. So, I don't think there's a lot of risk on you guys not getting recovery from an SAD, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Roman?
Thanks, Rick. So from everything I've heard so far, I've heard the term bonding and bonding. This project is not a project where we're gonna bond.
It's not big enough, right?
This isn't big enough, so this would come out of our own Public Act 188 fund, which we've got the money to do. That's what it's there for.
Okay.
I like Lisa's idea. I was gonna suggest the same thing, that if your association can put up something, I don't know what the number is. Yeah,
Oh,
in order to get started, but the
I mean,
point.
if you say went up from like $1,000, I think I could safely say we could do that. If you said you wanted $10,000, that's a bigger issue.
Okay, so let's say it was $10,000. As long as this district moved forward, the township could give you that 10,000 back. You could roll it right into the SAD. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, but I mean, we don't have that much of a reserve.
Right, and I'm not coming up with a number as to how much skin you'd have to put in the game yet, but in theory, that's how it could work. Have you talked at all to these people about time frame as far as payback?
Yeah.
Whether it's a 5-year or what was discussed?
I basically told them, because I know you're saying that it
10
can't be
years, I think.
bonded, but there is a possibility of getting bonds through the county. It's just a thought, just a possibility. And I don't know if you want to go that route or not. I talked to Rick about that possibility. But I did tell them that it could be 5 years, it could be 10. I said, I don't know, it's really up to the board. And if it's bonded, it depends on how long the bond is for.
It depends on what the costs are if we go through the county.
Well, it can always be looked at, but typically for a project this
yeah, we
small,
could,
you
I agree with you.
wouldn't bond it.
I'd like to also point out, the Johnson and Anderson proposal is not, it's not a quote of 18,000 for the proposal. That's a do not exceed amount of 18,000. So we will be able to break these costs out of here based on, I'm gonna have to have some discussions with J&A on time frames, but, we have unit pricing with Johnson and Anderson, so we should be able to come up with some numbers to get to the bid
Gotcha.
process. I'm gonna need from the board, I guess, to guide me to exactly where we need to be to.
Their estimate appears to be close to $7,500 for the topographic survey and the engineering drawings for bidding, based upon their proposal here. And that was just an estimate on their part, but
I think
that gives them maybe some idea of how much money they may have to front in order to make sure they cover the cost, not the township.
if I may, I'd also like to include creating actual bid specification so that
I think this,
we have an apples to apples comparison. That's been one of the problems that these folks have been getting, that, they'll have close enough construction, we'll tell them that they, just can leave, take out this berm and leave that one, and then the next guy wants to come in and grub it all out down to the, 10 feet below grade. So, they're,
Yeah, a lot of
they're
this,
all over the place.
a lot of this is administrative
Right.
conversation. Right now, we just
Yeah,
want
I
to
agree.
let's go forward. And we need to see whether or not we're going to establish this SAD. I would think that we might want to move forward with establishing it. I would say that we, As far as the costs that would be determined, I don't have an immediate answer for that, although this is looking like this is potentially something that the township could go back and enforce, so to speak, if we had to, if we had a non-compliant, you know,
The language in
cooperative group, so to speak. Here we have a cooperative group, and they have a problem that we're trying to solve. We do have an identifiable source that we could line item that out of.
Can I interject just one more thought for you guys? We had about 55 to 60% of ownership representation at the meeting we called to take the vote on whether or not we should try and do this ourselves or ask for the township support. We had 100% vote in favor of
I saw that.
taking this over to the
I
township.
saw that 22.
So, I mean,
Let me interject there a little bit, and see you looking at the clock, Mr. Supervisor. I've been accused of making meetings be extended. There is there's a difference between a
Accused?
yeah, there's a difference between people voting to have something done, and when they get the bottom line of what's going to cost them annually, they say, "Oh, now I'm not interested in that." And you need to know the issue that if this board passes the resolution, there's still 2 more public hearings that have to be held before this is set, before we can actually cause the work to begin. If 20% of the people in the benefited area sign a petition against it, then it kills the project. Whereas we need 51% of the people to petition to make it happen. So by us establishing it by motion instead of by petition, 20% of the people could come back and say, we don't want it anymore. Once the numbers come out, let's just say it's going to cost them $5,000 a year for 10 years. That's going to make people think twice. Won't be that much, but I just threw that number out there. So I think that we ought to pass the resolution. It's not to establish anything. It's the intent to establish. That allows us to administratively deal with the homeowners a little bit more and establish the motion to establish the SAD, which would be the next public hearing.
Well, the resolution in front of you actually does set the public hearing.
Oh, for
For the
establishment?
For establishment, yes.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a
Yes,
comment.
Mr. Roberts.
So, as has been mentioned, 2 ways to establish it. Township initiated or be petitioned.
Right.
And this board, I've been part of township initiation on an SAD before. And, you know, there's a good chance that there'll be some pushback.
Right.
Not everybody's going to be in favor of it, especially when they get shocked with the numbers. As we just seen, even with contingencies, still way above. So, me personally, if you had the majority of your homeowner association meet and everybody said yes, I would be much more comfortable if you all petitioned us, signed it, and brought it to us. Then I would be very comfortable saying, okay, let's go ahead, 51% of you want it. I know Mr. Powell said he's fine with township initiation SAD. And he explained what could still happen if we do that. So my personal recommendation, make me feel more comfortable, would be to petition us and then have us create it. Second of all, with SADs, we have a history of screwing them up pretty good. So it would be nice if somehow we could inform all of you on how these things work, because I've been here 6+ years and there's still some things I don't know. So it would be great if everybody had a handle on what's in front of them, what's going to take place, the time frame, the expense, and just all the votes that are in front of us. You know, it's well, let's see, Castlewood. How long did that take? Forever. You know, so these things can drag on. But I think that if everybody is educated and informed, it's going to go a lot better than you know, the other. So my opinion, for me, I would prefer to be petitioned. But sorry, go ahead.
I need a clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said if we petition the other 4 residences that are not a part of the association, that aren't bound by the master deed to be responsible for this, would be involved. Janine told us they would not be involved if we petition.
question.
I
No, they-
respectfully disagree with Janine because
involved.
this board establishes the boundaries of the SAD.
Okay, that's important.
And we
for
can
us.
include those in.
15% increase. That's a big benefit.
Yes.
To have those people involved with just 33 homes.
And they do benefit from this particular basin.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, they will be included.
Just so that I understand, the results of your vote, this is just an informal vote, correct? That's all that is. Okay.
Was at a board meeting with an official role. I'm not sure what you, it's as official as we get.
They didn't vote to
Mr.
spend
Roman,
money.
It was a vote without dollar amount.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Once you
Well,
get to
as the
150,
SAD,
They
they knew that at that point, it was about a $70,000 to $80,000 issue in our mind.
Yeah.
It's a different number today,
Yeah.
I admit that.
So my question for council is, as we move forward, if, assuming the intent resolution is passed, in order to get a 51% approval from the participants, as Mr. Ruggles said, what then needs to be done? Do you need a separate form signed by each of the
So-
yes votes?
So I don't quite understand your question, because what they're asking you to do and what's on your agenda is a township-initiated SAD. So if this moves forward, you're continuing as a township-initiated
forward.
SAD.
Oh, I see. Okay.
you don't
It is
move-
a township initiated.
In
That's what
front of
this
you
is.
today, that's what's in front of you.
Right.
The discussion that Mr. Ruggles pointed out was he would prefer it be petition-driven SAD, which are the two different ways it can be done.
so all they would need is a petition. Go back, they all sign it, or 51%, bring it to us, and then we'll initiate it that
It
way.
would delay the
Yeah.
project by 2 to 3 months to do
that's the
that.
problem.
To get everyone to sign it.
That's the problem.
And reestablish, there'd be another resolution to establish an SAD. So we'd be back here in about 2, 3 months if this wasn't passed
You think it
tonight.
would take that long?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's 33,
2
right?
months minimum, let's put it that way, because it's gonna take them 30 days to get them signed, minimum. And then it goes on our board agenda, which is another month, so 2 months minimum.
Okay, so, but we're still gonna initiate something that nobody really knows what the real expense is.
No, we're not initiating anything. This is the intent to initiate.
Yeah, but it's the first step down a slippery slope.
But the next public hearing then, everything that you want to have before them would be mailed to them, and they'd have meetings already, the staff would have meetings with them, so they'll know everything. We will represent everything at our next meeting, so that all the numbers will be known, everything will be out there at the next public hearing. And we can then decide to shut it down then, or continue with it. And then we still can shut it down at the next public hearing. The SAD will be established, but we can make a decision to assess everyone zero, which would essentially kill the SAD. So we have 2 more public hearings in which we can take input from the residents.
So then,
Mr. Lilly, go ahead.
so then at that point in time, once they see that it's 150 to 170,000, we're gonna be guessing at how many people are in favor of it, how many people are against it.
We will be, that is correct.
Right.
However, they can still, oh,
They can petition against.
petition
Petition
again.
Right.
again. Okay, Mr. Lilly, you had something to say?
As soon as he's done.
Okay, all right.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
As soon as.
Secretary of the board, everybody in the association has been notified of these numbers. They have the same paperwork that you have. Everybody.
There hasn't been a vote at that level, but they're now
Yeah.
aware that we're in that order of magnitude
Okay.
versus where we were.
They're aware of this expenditure at this point in time.
But let me ask one other
Potential.
question, because we tried to work closely with them and understand this process as best we could. So we get 20% of the people that say, I don't want to go this way.
Correct.
We're not going to get the money. You're going to do it anyway the same way, are you not?
No, then it would be on your board's responsibility to cause it to be done, and if you didn't, the township would cause it to be done and back charge. This is where Janine is right. Back charge only your residents, not the other 4. Your residents are the only ones bound legally to make sure it's done.
I guess the point is, in the end game in that result, and this is where we'll have impact on our residents when we explain this.
Yes,
It
correct.
makes no sense not to do it, because it's gonna happen anyway. And
Yes.
it's gonna cost you the same, maybe more.
And we can,
A question,
and we can spread it over 10 years.
You
Correct.
said if 20% shut it down. Now,
Right.
if 20% shut it down, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they could come back with 51%
They can.
and
absolutely.
reestablish it.
They can.
As long as you can get your 51%.
Right.
And how far down the line is that though? So then we've had
You
meeting,
are confident?
I feel very confident that will
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. There's no downside to them to do this. I agree.
The other way, it's the same
Yeah,
result.
20% shuts it down, and then we want to go.
All right, okay, let's get back on track here.
All right, I'm sorry.
Mr. Lilly, did
I
you have
just want to
something?
go on record to express my support for the SAD. But again, no matter how long this process takes, the only issues that I'm really concerned about is the fact that we're going to be spending money on this project between now and whether it takes a month or 2 months or 3 months. And to have some reassurance from maybe the association to make sure that those costs have been covered. Now, I don't think that those costs are going to be exorbitant, seeing some of J&A's just regular billings, but those costs have to be covered and they have to be paid, and they have to be paid promptly. They can't be sitting around for 30, 60, 90 days. So if we can resolve that issue, I don't see why even having a special meeting to move this process
We can
along.
move forward, yeah.
And it looks like an awful lot of this work can be done probably during the wintertime.
And it should be.
As far as the trees and whatever, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I think we can move this along quickly, being the extent of this, what I'm seeing here as far as the estimate goes, but we can find that assurance of taking care of those costs. I'm willing to move as quickly as we possibly can.
Mr. Potter, on Johnson and Anderson's quote, what do you think would be their, what we'll call bare bones to get you where you need to be?
What we would need would be the survey, the design documents,
I think that's about it.
and that's pretty much about it to get
About
us
$7,500
So
some
about
numbers.
$7,500.
for bidders.
for bidders. That's
Yeah.
correct.
We won't have real numbers until we get bids back.
Exactly.
In this particular case, I believe in the interest of the community as a whole in that particular area to avoid flooding and the sort. I would like to move forward with this particular action as it is. And I would say that we would need to have some cooperation from Settlers Point as far as some funding goes. It's hard for you to sit there and commit that at this moment in time without having your meeting. I would be very prepared to have that conversation. I'm sure the township will be able to do the best it can in its part, but be prepared to spend some money right now up front.
Is that a meeting with you?
That would be a meeting with your own board members that would say
Establishing how much money you're thinking.
how much you can come up with.
Yeah, staff.
You know, I believe the township will work with you, and because this will probably come out of I can't get that out.
PA 188.
Thank you, PA 188. I believe as long as we know that this is going to go forward, but if in the event that there's a shortfall, you know, the group has to realize that the inevitable would be that this would ultimately be done by another mechanism and or means and be a lot more expensive, and it would be.
You want us to communicate this through?
I would communicate that, yes.
Mr. Potter?
Through Mr. Potter, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that being said, excuse me, I would like to have a motion on the 18-034, the resolution for the Township Board of the Charter Township of White Lake to tentatively declaring its intention to establish special assessment district.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that motion.
Motion, looking for support?
Sport.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Mr. Potter, as far as the expenditure from Johnson and Anderson, are you looking to get a separate approval on that right now, or just part of it?
Well, we may not be above the level that I need board approval. But I think that if the board could approve us up to a certain amount, that would make the process faster for these folks, I would like to go ahead and
Mr.
do that.
Supervisor, I move that the township authorize the township engineer to provide the topographic survey and the design development documents phases of their proposal at a cost not to exceed $8,000, but that an agreement be established between the subdivision association and the township to front those costs.
Or reimbursement?
For reimbursement,
Let's put it at reimbursement.
yes.
Let's just leave it that the supervisor and the township attorney will work on
We'll
an
work on
agreement.
That sounds even better,
We'll work out the details.
Untie my hands.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll work out the details. Okay. You got that, Amy? I can't say that too many more times. You want to read that back?
This is the part where I want to know, so we're going to move that the township authorize the township engineer to provide the topographical survey and the design development document, the design document phase of their proposal at a cost not to exceed $8,000, and then stop there and say with the supervisor and township attorney?
No, subject to
An agreement.
an agreement be established between the township and the
Okay.
association to reimburse those costs.
Reimbursement.
Okay, but agreement established between the township association and the township to reimburse funds. Where was the supervisor and township
With,
attorney? Or-
authorizing the supervisor and a township attorney to proceed.
Okay, to proceed. Okay, got it. I think I got it.
Okay, now I can let you guys know, in theory, if this goes forward, all of these funds will be rolled into the project and they'll be back into your, we can provide these back to you if that's what you desire. So we can either lower the project cost or we can roll these back into your funds. But this way, you're actually taking the risk, not the township, that it doesn't go forward. And that's what this board or that's what we're looking to do.
Earlier in the conversation, I heard the word contribute, deposit, words like that. Now I'm hearing you want us to fund the whole thing.
No, just fund the design part of it.
Right.
And then the SAD will fund the balance of it and reimburse this portion back to you.
This will come back to you in the SAD.
Logistically, I'm not sure how it's playing out right now in my head. We'll come up with an agreement, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. The idea being, if the project moves forward, you could get that money back. If the project fails, that money is gone. It's your loss, not the township's.
Well, the money's gone, but are they gonna get anything?
Well, they get the
I don't know
construction
what
drawings.
kind of
They'll have a
drawings.
survey.
Oh, yeah. They'll
have a
still get all the
survey, right?
construction
It's
drawings.
not gone.
See, I don't see that happening. And again, I'm sorry to
Right.
delay this, but I'm thinking of without going out and doing a special assessment with our members and trying to get money, I'm not sure there's, matter of fact, I know there's not $8,000 in a reserve to give that to you now. There might be 4. There's some number between that. If you're looking for the whole 8, then you're right. We're gonna delay this thing because we're gonna have to collect that money from the members. And as I said, we have trouble getting maintenance fees.
Well, you might be able to come up with the amount for the topographic survey that's gonna take them a couple, 3 weeks to do. So whatever funds you're able to contribute to allow J&A to get started, you're then shortening that process by that much.
Okay.
We'll work it out.
We're done. Okay, all right. Okay, I don't even know where we were at this moment in time. We had a motion, we had support.
Motion from.
You authorized the supervisor
Just
at
a
the end of the
motion, there
day.
was no support.
No support
Just
today.
support
Oh,
on
we're
the
looking for
motion.
support now.
I'll support that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move forward.
Okay.
Some way, shape, or motion.
But the resolution passed, right?
And the resolution passed, yes. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
It's not an easy thing to do
Right.
at all, and it's not an easy thing to do what you're doing. But here's a perfect case in point of where you need to establish a long-term maintenance program for those basins.
Yes, you need a sinking
From here on
fund.
out.
They don't
Okay.
understand what they're doing.
This was a bit of a surprise for all of us, trust me.
Yeah. Who owns your roads? Does Oakland County own your roads?
Oakland County owns the road,
Okay.
but again, the city has to do to.
You'll have to take care of them. So you might want to think about sinking fund for those as well.
Okay, moving on to item 9E, the Resolution 18-036, General Appropriations Act and the Township 2019 Budget Approval.
Motion to approve it.
support.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Is that for both parts?
Or both as one?
They are.
It's a double.
I'll
We're
retract the
teasing.
motion.
We're
Yeah,
teasing.
please.
Okay, at this moment in time, I will open it up to the board for comment. Anyone have a comment that they'd like to state? Mr. Lilly?
Supervisor, first I want to talk about the budget itself before we get into the appropriations act. The chief has submitted a request to the board,
Which chief, Terry?
the fire chief
Fire chief, thank you.
has submitted a request to the board for an airboat in the amount of $100,000. And I believe since that meeting, he's reduced that to $85,000. Also, a grant person that the board several years ago, when we hired the grant person, said that we would hire them under the grant, but now it's being, since the grant is not being renewed, another $69,500. Like to make some recommendation for promotions. Those come to about $52,000, and requests for a command vehicle in the amount of $60,000. For several years now, the Township Board has discussed the possibility of trying to get Station 3 opened up, and we've been told, I guess at this point, that in order to accomplish that need, that we would have to hire at least 6 additional firemen. Now, we've talked about this for quite a few years now. At least two elections have went by that we have not asked for additional firefighters in order to man the station, as evidently the answer that's going to take additional millage in order to accomplish that. But I'm not supportive at this particular time for the 4 items that I mentioned, that there's almost $300,000 in money there that could be utilized to at least put on an additional 3 people that would at least get us started in that process. I'm not interested in personally prolonging this for another 2 years or 4 years to get where we need to be, and I believe all the importance of what the chief had indicated as far as the use of the airboat. I know the importance. 18 and a half years to spend on the fire department, so I know that the importance of every life is important, but I really feel that those 4 items should be removed from the expenditure part of the budget at the present time, and further talks and negotiations go on about really the need or other alternatives that can be explored to accomplish both the need for those additional people to man Station 3, as well as the possibility of, if the airboat and some of these things are so important, that possibility of other neighboring communities or the county or the airport or whatever, that possibilities of sharing of cost in order to do that. But I feel strongly about those 4 items as mentioned. I don't want to, not going to stand away of the budget being passed tonight, either the budget, the Appropriations Act, but I feel strongly that now is the time that we start the process to start manning that station and hiring at least 3 people with those funds and moving further. I know there's other savings within the fire department, both the 04M millage that is specifically for new and additional firefighters. Chief maintains a general fund savings account that needs to be looked at, and I'm sure that I'm just not in a hurry at this particular time to put money in the budget that I'm not convinced that should be spent in this way, and at a future date all those items could be talked about, further discussion, further consideration, and at least an approval before the money is spent. So I just wanted to go on record as stating those 4 things at this point.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Ruggles?
How do you handle that? I agree with some of what Terry said, but I mean, is this the time to negotiate, the safer grant money in the budget? Or do we discuss that at a later date?
I believe all of the things that are on this particular thing are requests, and the funding requests. It's not a guarantee that it's going to happen. It's just a projection of requests. Each one of these items would have to come before this board again in order for them to happen. It's just putting the dollars in line to do these types of things. It is I will call it, I don't want to call it a wish list, but it's partly projection of what some of the accomplishments that have to be done. And there are some concerns that I have for some of them in particular, more so than others, okay, that need to be met. And we have been, we just haven't been up to speed on it in our lake community where we have 22 named lakes, or 28, I forget what it is, 20 some odd named lakes. So we do need to think about things. Now, is that all going to happen tonight? And here, if we say yes, the answer is no. Okay, they'll still have to come before the board. Is there an opportunity to possibly go to Oakland County, Homeland Security, the airport, the sheriff's department? I mean, the list goes on, potential sources of funding or cooperative purchasing or the sort of things that could happen. We could look into those and see what happens, exhaust those options, and then make a decision and then move forward. So this is not necessarily an absolute guarantee that these things are going to happen. This is just a request in the financial that it could happen. Mr. Powell.
That was going to be one of my questions. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean that
it's going to
we're
happen.
giving our approval.
No.
That's correct. Okay.
Absolutely not.
I wanted to know whether or not all of my colleagues received the answers to some questions from the chief.
Yes.
And I want to thank the chief for responding, because I think he did a very good job and thorough job responding to some of these questions. A couple of which that I had a question on. It said, what would you expect the training cost to be? And he said it's included in the purchase of the boat. But that's training one or two people. But my experience with the police and the fire department is you don't just have one person know how to operate. So you're going to have training time for almost everybody, and that's going to be a cost to the township that he didn't include in his question.
And again, these are not necessarily the items, the general appropriation questions.
No, that's
These are
true.
things that need to be discussed at the time
Yep,
when
good
these
point.
items in the future would come before this board. And everything that you're saying is exactly true.
Right.
And you're spot on. But at the time they become before the board, these particular items would be addressed. At the moment, we're just looking to pass the General Appropriations Act and pass the 2019 budget.
So I have a tendency to pass the budget because everything in there, let me put it this way, we don't vote on the paper that's used in the different departments. Those things are used automatically out of the budget. So the big ticket items are the items that the township board then would review
Yes.
later on. I think my only question is, because I kind of agree with Terry's position on this, do we put it in the budget when we are seriously considering making it happen and purchasing it, or do we leave it in there and then discuss the actual purchase? I guess my question might be, how come the chief doesn't have in here then a budget for 4, 5, or 6 firemen to man Station 1? Because we don't have to hire them, but it's something that he's looking to do, or at least some projection on expenses that would be incurred if we were to man Station 1, part-time or full-time. He doesn't use...
Station 3, you mean.
Station 3, I'm sorry, Station 3.
I knew you.
So he doesn't throw those costs in there, and I'm wondering why, if in fact they're for projections and budgets only, but he does these other items. And so it makes me think that he's not prioritizing something that maybe this board might rather have prioritized. So that's just my comment on the budget so
Understood.
far.
Very valid point. Yeah. And that's been expressed by all the board members at one time or another, to get number 3 open. That is correct. But again, these are just, what I'm trying to do is get the budget through tonight. There'll be anything that comes before us, including the possibility of hiring additional firemen out of the 04M funding.
Yeah, and-
Excuse me, Chief. I'm on a roll. Okay. Including that, so that would be something that would also become before the board, and I would urge the chief in the next, in the near future, that some further conversation be had regarding that matter, and that may subsequently change these particular values. So there will be some decisions made on that, and I can assure you that I intend to push the matter. So, again, what I'm trying to do right now is get the General Appropriations Act through. This money, as in anything else, can also be reprogrammed for other things, if need be. There is no guarantee that any of this will go through unless it comes back to the board for further review for these items. But I would like to move the budget forward and approve it as it has been submitted at this point in time. Any other questions to the board members? You already had your chance. So.
I want another chance.
Go ahead.
Mr. Supervisor, we have a little different philosophy of money being placed in the budget. Particularly, I don't like to place any money in anybody's budget unless I'm one of those people that agree that, yes, you're going to spend money to do that. We're not talking about taking money away from the fire department if we reduce these items and putting the money in the general fund and expending it elsewhere. We're talking about just removing some dollar items that we don't feel that we want to support at this particular time and placing it back into a savings account. And I feel much more comfortable of anybody's budget to, at a time that the board seriously considers purchasing or doing whatever with that money, to take the time at that particular point. It takes the next morning to put that money back in to purchase or whatever. So I don't agree with the philosophy that you just stick a bunch of money in somebody's budget and they can't spend it and do whatever. So I really prefer my philosophy, which is if I'm not agreeing to pay for something, to leave it in the savings account until such time as seriously consideration and approval of
I understand.
purchase or whatever.
But the money actually doesn't go
different
anywhere.
philosophy than what you talked about.
But the money actually doesn't go anywhere. It still retains itself. And
It stays in the fund, yes.
It's only if and or when it will be spent. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, Andrew?
Yeah, I have one for the, I'm honestly, I'm in favor of the safer grant position. I've talked to people inside and outside White Lake Township that have said that he is a awesome resource for the township. Yes, he might cost us some money, but at the same time, when he brings us back to the township, the staff that he's brought in, they're dependent on him. So someone like that, what do we have to put in the budget now in order to retain him into 2019?
That's already,
Yes.
that's part of this.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
That's in a projection of the budget as it is.
Double check.
And in particular, the position is an at-will position.
Yeah, yep,
so
I'm aware. Yep.
It is not a guaranteed position.
Yep.
So at any time the township board chooses to go in a different direction, there's always that possibility. So,
Just a quick comment.
yes, sir.
It's my belief that these budgets should be as conservative as possible, meaning that you lightly state your revenues, maybe even understate them, and overstate your expenses. Once you start to remove expenses from a budget, whether you believe in them or not, out of sight, out of mind. I might not agree with everything in the chief's budget either, but I like to see it there so that I remember it, I can think about it, I can analyze it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I like a conservative budget too.
Okay. At this moment in time, I'm looking for resolution number, I'm looking for a motion for resolution 18-036.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 18-036, the 2019 General Appropriations Act
And budget.
and budget.
Okay, I have a motion, looking for support.
I'll support that.
I think Liz took
That's
that
fine.
one. Okay,
A roll call vote? Mr. Supervisor?
it can be, doesn't have to be, but it can be.
I'm requesting it, please.
Denied.
Okay.
Eat your muffin.
Eat my muffin. Don't tempt me, man, I will.
Roll call vote.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
I'm tended to
It's a yes or no.
agree, so I'm going to say yes.
Thank you.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
As I indicated in my statement before, I have no intentions of not passing the township budgets tonight, but I did want to make sure that my comments were part of the record. So I vote yes. Mr. Colwell?
Yes, with comment, and that is, as my statement stands, any of these items that want to go forward will need to be brought back before this board, and we'll have to have some further conversation. Thank you. So, that being said, the resolution passes 18-036. Thank you. Okay. Now that I lost my agenda, somebody has on this. Thank you, Michael. Okay, we are going to go to the POLC paid on call tentative agreement. Mr.
Didn't you?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm all screwed up here.
I know.
Boy, I'm really moving things. See, Mike, you really got me.
I know, I'm so
Long way to
sorry.
go, Rick.
I'm just trying to get out of here. Yeah.
Didn't you move the budget right under?
We did. I misspoke.
All you have to do is approve the Appropriations Act. You
Yeah.
don't have to approve the budget.
Yeah, it's Appropriations Act.
Well, my motion included the budget.
Yeah, it's all right. Your
It
verbiage.
does include it.
Yeah, just
We're going to go to item 9F, the resolution 18-037, 2019 Township Board salaries. Anybody have a comment on that at this moment in time? Any of the board members? Typically, this follows the contract as far as historically, Mr. Lilly, how long? You had mentioned that this typically just follows the...
Yeah, I can remember back about 20 years that seems like the board has always went along with the fact that once the unions had negotiated their contracts, and we've always made sure that there was some equality across the board for everybody, that the salary requests have been placed before the township board agenda for an equal amount.
Yes, Counselor?
In the future, I recommend that you do separate resolutions since they are subject to petition. So if it's petitioned, all of the salaries will be petitioned versus if it were done separately.
We're talking about each individual, the 4 items separately?
Yes, the Attorney General has recommended that. Now, again, it's not binding, so you can still, it's not legal or illegal, but it is best practice.
Okay. It's historically, it's
future.
been done this way, but,
Okay.
you know, this is historically how it's been done. Any questions from the board? Okay. All right, therefore, I'm looking for a resolution. Yes,
Question,
yes,
what percentage does this salary increase represent?
not enough. Okay.
3%. 3%.
3%.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
First off, I dislike when elected officials get to determine their own salary increases. I would like to make a request that this board consider, and I looked at other townships out there, or Michigan, went through MTA and all that you start to put together a compensation committee by people from the township, citizens, just like you do a planning commission, just like you do a board review. So we actually get to look at, we will review the salaries and determine the increase. I think it's a conflict of interest, the way this is handled. I am requesting, I don't want to be on the board, I will help form, but I would like to see I'm looking at townships, Ada, Plymouth, Saginaw, Pittsfield, Bedford. I went around, one thing this township doesn't do, even when you type in search compensation, there's nothing there. I can go to all the townships. I can look at, they come up with MTA rules, everything else. We do not, nothing here that tells the people that we have even a right to petition if we disagree 30 days to do something about the raises. I believe you guys do a great job, you work hard, but I just believe that we need to go out and look at having a compensation committee in this township now. I think it's about time it's done.
That's something worth considering, but...
And I'm willing to
Yeah.
participate and get involved in it.
It is something worth considering, Pete. It's hard to say. At this particular edifice, we need to go forward.
Right, I understand.
But if for the future, it is potentially something to talk about.
Mr. Supervisor, in my opinion, and I appreciate you saying that, Pete, My concern is boards tend to use those compensation committees as scapegoats. So they go to a number of places and they say, oh, you guys are way underpaid. You guys need $5,000 pay increases. And the boards say, oh, we didn't do it. Our hands were off. It's the committee. And the next committee on the community next door uses that as an excuse for them to have raises. And I find it, we need to stand on our own and say, listen, we're making this decision.
And again, we've typically used what's
Yeah.
percentage has been negotiated with the unions, and
Right.
that we kind of let that. Now, we could sit there and say the same thing, but I will tell you, they're all modest
I
raises.
understand. And I'm not
And I
saying- but
understand.
But I appreciate your concern, Pete. Okay, thank you.
Needs to be looked at, Pete. I agree.
I agree. There'll be some further conversation. Okay. Are we done? Any other? Okay. Okay, looking for a motion on Resolution 18-037. Have a motion?
Motion to approve Resolution 18-037, Township Board Salaries.
Have a motion to approve. Looking for support?
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
I'm happy with my $20 a day.
Moving on. Okay. Now we're gonna get somewhere. Item 10, 10A, old business, second reading of amendment to zone ordinance number 58.
Hi,
Mr. O'Neill.
thank you. You will all probably remember from last month that we had the first reading of 3 sections of the ordinance that the Planning Commission made recommendations on after public hearings that were held earlier this fall. Those are sections 4.2, which deals with maintenance of animals, 5.12, which deals with fences, walls, and other barriers, and 7.1, which is a permit for temporary use of motorhome, manufactured home, or travel trailer. So tonight, before you are these amendments for second reading, which is effectively adoption. I handed all of you the red line. It was blue line, now it's also red line with the updates since we last discussed a month ago, section 7.21. And there was some discussion at that time about splitting up the 4-week period of time to make it a little bit more flexible for anyone who would want to potentially park a motorhome temporarily and use it for a temporary premise at their home for a guest or other recreation. And so that language has been, or some language has been added, which allows that to be split into 2-week increments. And other than that, there was some discussion regarding, in particular, the sketch that needed some work for fences and yards. And so we've researched that and we've communicated to the firm that we use for these types of things and let them know that we're going to need to amend the sketch if section 5.12 is passed tonight to address the changes for elimination of 6-foot fencing in the front yard of any home, and also make it a little easier on the eyes than the one that we have now, which isn't the most imaginative sketch. So we want to try to make it a little bit easier for the average person to understand. So there'll be a note added, which doesn't need to be a part of the language, that just refers you to the sketch, and then that sketch will be updated, and the sketch is really just sort of supplemental in the ordinance. The sketches themselves aren't really approved. They're just helping to depict what the verbiage is trying to convey. So that is where we're at. If you have any other comments or questions, I'd be happy to walk through it all with you. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Any questions from the board members?
I just want to thank Sean. We had a detailed conversation about this, and I think it came out to be a fair compromise to split it up.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
And I agree as well. I just have a question. Sean and I talked at length about the fence issue, and I think we're on like mind. Nothing looks worse than a 6-foot high fence in front of somebody's home, blocking the vision back and forth across the front yards. And so I believe that's the intent of section 5.12D. The way it is read, however, let's just assume, and let me ask you a hypothetical, Sean. if the minimum setback for the front of the house per ordinance is 35 feet,
Yes.
but the house is set back 45 feet, where would the 6-foot high fence be allowed to be placed in front of the house but behind the 35-foot front yard setback line?
No.
Okay, the way this reads right now, it appears, and maybe council can help me out here a little bit, no fence over 4 feet high shall be placed in the front yard of a residence or closer than the minimum front setback line. So is the definition of front yard in the ordinance, is it in front of the setback line, the ordinance setback line, or is it defined as in front of the home that exists on the site?
Front yard is the home, or is the yard that, there's a minimum setback, but it's the yard that exists between the front of the structure and the street.
Okay, then I'm good. So then your documents there, your schematics will help me understand that better.
Yeah, and there is actually a sketch in the definitions under yards where in the front yard is defined as a yard extending across the full width of the lot and lying between the front line of the lot or side yard with road frontage and the nearest line of the building.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
if they're, in that instance,
Yes.
it would be 45 feet of front yard where only 35 was required. So if they add additional depth to their front yard by siting their house further back, then they've also eliminated the opportunity to put additional 6-foot fence. If they just desired to put 6-foot fencing around their yard, they'd want to put it as far to the front of the lot as they possibly could to increase their side and backyard.
If their house was to be built yet.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. That's exactly, I wanted to make sure we
No,
were
it
on the
was a
same
good question.
Front of the house kind of.
I'm great with that.
In the
I think
sketch
that's
that we
great.
had discussed when we
Yes.
went through this, would clean up, and that is a sketch on the screen behind you. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot, and so we're going to add add to that, because not only does it need to be changed per the changes that you're potentially making tonight, but it needs a little bit better job. We searched in about 5 minutes online and actually found some pretty nice sketches from other communities. This one happens to be from Altoona, Iowa. I knew of Altoona, Pennsylvania, but I learned that there's an Altoona, Iowa today. So we're going to do a little bit better job with our sketch, so it's
Mr. Supervisor, this is one of the major items that the Zoning Board of Appeals deals with, so I just wanted to make sure we were on the same wavelength. I think Sean's done a great job, so thank you.
And I share your concern, Mike. When I was on the ZBA, there were multiple fence cases that would come before us, and there was always to be some confusion, in particular when it came to a house on a corner.
Exactly.
And this hopefully will clear the water a little bit. And again, if you can get a good illustration that gives people a visual, it'll really make things work.
Picture is worth 1,000 words, and well, I can put it back up if you want to look at what 1,000 words looks like. Well,
I don't
maybe
have my
500
screen
in
over
the
there to look
instance
at.
of- Yeah, I didn't turn it on, but
I don't care about it.
Yeah.
This is the new one over here.
Who can see that?
I can see it. Great.
People who
It's
need to
great.
see
They can see it. Can everybody see it out there? They can see it. They can all see it.
People who don't bring their paper. So I will say, obviously, just briefly, we see ordinance amendments on a fairly regular basis. Every 18 months to 3 years, we seem to send a handful through. Sometimes it's to correct old sections that were created 25 years ago that are visited every 25 years and we realize something's no longer relevant. Sometimes state law changes. Sometimes your desire as a community to allow or not allow something changes. So it's sort of a living document. And so I appreciate and I wanted to acknowledge the Planning Commission's work on this. As is always the case, they really spend their time and roll their sleeves up. So I appreciate their work on this. And, Scott, you're there with them regularly doing that work, as well as, Jason, the senior planner, and Jason, the ordinance officer as well, who we all participated in this, and it was an interesting process, and so I just wanted to acknowledge Jason Michaelangelo and Jason Hudson as well.
Okay.
Thank them for their help.
Very good. Any other questions from the board? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the amendments to zoning ordinance 58 as presented tonight.
I have a motion to approve. Looking for support?
Support.
I have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Put the
Thank you,
fences,
Sean.
fences to rest. Good job.
A lot of discussion on the fence.
Yeah.
Hours. Fence.
Yep. A new business, request for a deferral of sewer requirement 7290 Mistwood. Mr. Potter. Whoop.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Well said.
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, so the homeowner of 7290 Mistwood Drive. Mistwood Drive is off of Bogey Lake Road. Is in need of connecting to sanitary sewer. He's doing some home remodeling there in his backyard and some landscaping. And so we started a cost estimate for this gentleman, and per Township Ordinance, Section 38-514, because he is on a corner lot, he is required to extend sanitary the length and width. Now, sanitary already exists on Bogey Lake Road, and so we started looking into extending the width of his property. And so you have in your package a site plan for what we would like to do, and I'd like to briefly go over what the ordinance would require him to do, which would be an alternative to this. What you kind of can't see on the south edge of this property where Mistwood Drive comes across his property, he is the first house in on the block. By ordinance, he would have to extend that pressure sewer across the width of his property and place an intermediate flushing structure on the southwest corner of his property to provide for future extension of that main for the rest of the people in that development. In addition to that, his house sits on top of a very large hill. And because of where his grinder station would be placed, he would also need to have an air release valve structure. Now, between the cost of that main and the cost of those two structures, we estimate somewhere up to around $42,000 in additional costs to this gentleman just to comply with Section 38-514. Now, DPS is requesting the Township Board to authorize a deferral of this ordinance requirement, and with language to be included in that to automatically participate in any future SAD to extend sanitary down Mistwood Drive. So this site plan before you takes his cost estimate from, basically reduces his cost estimate down close to $40,000 and brings him down to $29,000, which is a lot better for the customer. And to build that system in the way, there's no reason to have an intermediate flushing structure at the first house. That's like 50 feet away from the branch flushing structure where that main comes off of Bogey Lake Road. In addition to that, having that grinder station on top of the hill requires that air release valve structure, which is a maintenance cost item for the township. And then he would have to grant an easement access somehow up that hill of his grass front yard for the Oakland County truck to get up there and maintain that air release valve structure.
Makes sense, yeah.
So I'm asking the board to authorize township attorney to write this deferral and for the necessary parties to have this executed on behalf of DPS and this customer.
Mr. Supervisor, I apologize for...
No, you don't.
Yeah, okay, I don't.
Don't lie to me, Mike.
Normally, I would be asking the applicant, the property owner, to request us for a variance or a deviation. That, in my opinion, it would be appropriate. In this particular case, I know why Aaron is doing it, because it would really be detrimental to our overall system to actually have it go in as the ordinance requires. So I really appreciate Aaron stepping out on this and doing it properly. And it's really helping the owner out, but it's really helping the township out as well to allow for this deviation to happen. I just have a question. If the SAD is established sometime in the future down Mistwood, do we need an easement from this gentleman along Mistwood in order to place our sanitary sewer in Mistwood?
No, we have road right away in
Okay,
Mistwood.
great.
We're
Just so that it's clear, because Aaron and I have talked about this at length, and frankly, I have started an agreement consistent with what we've done in the past for water connections. This isn't a deviation or a variance. It's simply a deferral, meaning don't require them today. And if and when in the future the neighbors have an issue and need to connect, it will be addressed at that point, and the homeowner would agree to cooperate with the township in whatever the township needs at that time.
Correct.
Good.
And that will run with the property?
And that should run with the property, that
Yes.
agreement.
Correct.
Will run with the property. Yeah. Any other questions, board members? Okay, looking for a motion to allow the township attorney and the supervisor and DPS to move forward with a deferral agreement.
And you're authorized to sign one.
And authorize the supervisor to sign those documents.
I move that agreement, Mr. Supervisor.
Motion, I will need support.
Did we also include there that the applicant will pay for the attorney for the document itself? I don't know whether that's part of his plan cost at this point.
We can't do that.
But he pay for whatever the cost of that agreement is.
Pay for the cost of the document. Okay, I'll go along with that.
I would include that in my motion.
Okay, as we have support with that
I'll support.
amended motion, to cover the cost of the document. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on. Okay. 11B, first reading amendment to Chapter 26, Article 8, Section 26-239 of the Code of Ordinances, Youth Tobacco. Chief? It's going to address a problem that that most communities are experiencing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Some of you may know I am the board president of the Huron Valley Community Coalition. This is a coalition to reduce substance abuse in youths. Randy Root was here probably about 6 months ago, and he runs the Huron Valley Community Coalition. And together we have monthly meetings with the community, and we talk about issues that we have in the community. And vaping always pops up. It's the FDA has called it an epidemic. And what I like to do is read what vaping is. Vaping is the act of inhaling and exhaling the aerosol, often referred to as vapor, which is produced by an e-cigarette or similar device. The term is used because e-cigarettes do not produce tobacco smoke, but rather an aerosol, often mistaken for water vapor, that actually consists of fine particles. Many of these particles contain varying amounts of toxic chemicals, which have been linked to cancer, as well as respiratory and heart disease. And the reason they call calling it an epidemic is because it has spiked in middle school and high school use. It's jumped 1.5 million users.
Chief, can you estimate what percentage of high school students vape?
It is, and I will find it. It's increased. I will tell you this: it's increased 80% among high schoolers and 50% among middle schoolers. So it's jumped by 1.5 million in 1 year. So about 3.6 million kids vaped. I don't have the exact number. 20.8%. So have vaped in the past month. So it's not that they do it consistently, but they have done it in the past month. So as you can see, it's gone from e-cigarettes used to be a way to help you quit smoking because it gives you something else to do, and it's turned into this, which good intentions, but the results are bad. So through the Huron Valley Community Coalition, Randy's worked on and gone to communities and spoke about this, and Milford Township has already put a vaping ordinance into effect. We're working on Highland Township, and I'm here today in reference to the first reading of this ordinance, which is really just an add-on to the tobacco ordinance. Lisa and I have worked for several months on this, getting together to make it work. And that's my spiel. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you, recognizing that this need to be dealt with and as quickly as possible. And I appreciate your involvement. Is Counselor anything to add?
I just want to add, Dan did a great job on this. When we first drafted a version of this, it specifically limited to nicotine products because in my naivety, I didn't know that it was anything more than that. So we did take, we planned to put it on last month and we talked about it. So we made those revisions so it's not limited to just nicotine products. It's all vapor products. And the way we did it was we literally pulled out, we currently have a youth tobacco ordinance in White Lake Township. We pulled out that youth tobacco ordinance and we simply added vapor, so tobacco and or vapor products. We did some cleaning up, reference community mental health services versus the old name, and that's all this ordinance is, and this is a first reading.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, did you say there are vapor products other than nicotine?
That's right. So when we
Like-
first drafted it, we limited it to nicotine products. And Dan questioned it because in his experience, he believed it was more than just nicotine products. And so Dan did the research on it and we then amended it so it would include more than just nicotine products.
I'm just curious. What else did they vape?
It's really they put it towards kids because there's melon flavor. There's all kinds of different fruity flavors that they put it towards. So adults, don't really care about those flavors too much. So they're targeting kids, and so what? And I'll read you. What's one piece in the article? The e-liquid and vaporizer products usually contains a propylene glycol or vegetable glycerin-based liquids with nicotine, flavoring, or other chemicals and metals, but not tobacco. So there's actually they're inhaling metals in some of their products.
I attended a meeting today amongst the impact of the passing of the cannabis issue on the election a couple weeks ago or last week, and they actually now have cartridges of cannabis, of marijuana that is slid in there, and they're now doing marijuana in the vaping cigarettes.
It's getting to be a growing problem.
Yeah.
It is something that I'm getting more and more referrals on. The kids are referring to it as clear, and it has THC in it.
Yeah.
It's like vaping has now become another gateway to substance use and abuse.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, Chief, thank you very much. Any other
Yes,
questions for
thank you.
Chief? Okay, looking for a motion to move this on to second reading?
I'll make a motion to move this on to, see, let me get what it's called here. The second reading amendment to Chapter 26, Article 7, Section 26239 of the Ordinance Code, Youth Tobacco. Move to second reading.
Motion, looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Ms. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Very much. Okay, we're going down to 11D, the paid on call tentative agreement. There was some conversation that went back and forth with the Police Officers Labor Council. They've reached a tentative agreement with the firefighters. And if you've read the agreement, it was dated August 14, 2018. It had the duration, the wages, which were 3%, and 2.5. And Section 6, the township accepts the union's proposal. They picked up one additional, I believe, the day after Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. Article 18 was the uniforms. After 2 years of employment, we would make sure that they got a bright colored jacket, very quickly and identifiable as fire personnel. And I believe that's definitely fair and equitable. And I think for the most part, this was a fairly benign agreement. And I would like to get a motion to move it. Does any of the board members have a question? Mr. Lilly?
I'll make a motion to support the amendment to the on-call.
I'll support that.
Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. We're moving to item F, White Lake versus John Volkert, case number 18-164285-CD, consent judgment. Counselor,
It was pretty
a
complicated.
little bit you want to say?
So, as you know, the township initiated litigation against Mr. Volkert for storage of boats on his property. He had a lot of boats stored on the outside of his property, and he's done that for several years, increasing on an annual basis to the point where the township authorized me to file litigation against him. Mr. Volkert has agreed in the consent judgment in front of you to remove all of the boats, the outdoor stored boats, by June 15 of next year, and to not ever store boats outside again. What he is going to do, though, is he has a couple of buildings. He has 2 structures. So within the existing structures, he wants to be able to store boats in accordance with the township's home occupation ordinance. So basically, he's agreeing by June of 19 to no longer be in violation of the township's ordinances. One of the conditions that we required was that the fire inspector and the building official actually look at these buildings and place whatever requirements they deem appropriate to ensure the safety of the structure and the property. My understanding is that the fire chief, the fire inspector, and the building official gave Mr. Volkert a list, and this consent judgment, while it doesn't list out all of the conditions, it does say that Mr. Volkert will comply with any requirements of the fire inspector and the building official, and he's agreeing to do that. It does state that this can be recorded if we want it to be recorded. And Mr. Volkert has indicated to me that he's reviewed it, he's comfortable with it, and if the township board were to approve it today, he will sign it whenever, and we'll get it entered with the court.
Awesome.
Very good. Okay, so we have an objective that we met that will put him in compliance with the home occupation.
Yes.
Very good. Any questions from the board? Okay. Looking for a motion to instruct the counselor to, how do you want, authorize me to sign it? So,
I make a motion to,
Oh, actually, it's me who's signing it. So
that's
just
what I thought. You don't see my name anywhere on here.
what do you need the motion to say?
We do need a motion to authorize
Approve the
it.
consent judgment.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent judgment.
Motion?
Support?
Motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I'd like to really thank the board for everyone for working on it, and Mr. Hudson. I'd like to thank you for your continued code enforcement work, and your diligence in trying to, help in certain areas, and your ability to work with
Yes.
a resident to resolve the problem, without getting into a big confrontation and kind of bring everything to light.
I agree.
Thank you. You
Good,
did a great
Jason.
job. So, Dan, don't let his hat, make sure it goes back on his head. Okay. So, thank you. Next is just kind of like an FYI. I've got one thing. It was supposed to be the last thing, but there's something else that Paula got added. So this will be H. And what this was, I just wanted to share this with you. This is kind of a neat little tool that came my way, and I'm just going to kind of tune everybody in on this because it's now what people are wanting to see and wanting to do, and we have an organization that is. We should have 2 of each. I may not have.
It's okay. I don't have one.
Okay.
There's another one here.
You should have. You got the same one twice.
Okay.
And then here's another one. It's a group that essentially does informational. I put this out there first of all to you as board members because at some point I'd kind of like your input on it, just to kind of check it out, see what your thoughts are. But as we have our website, this is another way to communicate with the public and also to promote businesses within our community. This program is of no cost to White Lake Township, 0, okay? And what they would do, they ultimately would take and create a tab on our existing website and take you to a video tour of the township.
Cool.
They would produce videos that would maybe introduce them to fire, police, DPS, whatever we ultimately decide and prioritize to have done, and the township itself. And in turn, the way that they generate the money to cost this is they place a series of ads around the outside of this particular window as it's going on. We're also with an agreement that I had Lisa look over and critique and take a look at. We are in the driver's seat. It is a one-year agreement that we can go into. There's no cost to the township. And we also have a say in who
Advertises.
can advertise. So we don't get anything that may be inappropriate for the township. So those things are out there. So again, this is just kind of an FYI. Just wanted you to look at it. You have a chance to look at it. Take a look at it. All right. I think it's a good little avenue to go down, and I'll look for some feedback on that.
I didn't notice Tricia's emails.
Is this gonna be done with drones, or
I beg your pardon?
is it gonna be done with drones, or?
No. That can be done. It can be done with almost anything. The video production can be done with almost anything, but it's just how this would be done. It would essentially be, you would go to our website, there would be a click on video tour, you would go to video tour, and then whatever the township decides to do a video tour of, a drone, a tour through, the building, I wouldn't want to do that, but, or, showing off our a new apparatus or whatever it is that we want to do, some of the amenities, we can highlight them. And as this video is playing, the informational video is playing, it's bordered by businesses in our community that support it, and in turn, someone that's new that comes to town, they may not know about a particular company that's here. They may not know that, there's a printing company down at, Cooley Lake Road and Union Lake Road, something of that effect. So it could be very helpful, and we're trying to communication going. So that's just what it is right now.
Just a comment. Rick.
Yes.
I don't mind ads around the edges of of the screen. I just hope you don't have to watch an ad or anything like that,
No.
do you?
No.
Not.
No, it's not
That's
that
good.
And like I said, we'll do a little more homework on it, but I just wanted to kind of show you there's some other things that I'm looking at doing.
Pretty neat.
Okay, and again, the best part, no cost to the township, and it's currently being used in multiple Michigan communities, and they seem to be pleased with it, so.
Cool.
The next item is item 11I. It is the Pollock option. You should all have before you the option to the purchase agreement, which finally made its way back to us in the last few days, and I wanted to get it before you. I will tell you that Mr. Roman and myself, in the absence of Mr. Lilly, when he was off for his little time there, we went back and forth multiple times on this, trying to iron out some of the smaller details and some of the little things that came out. Everything as the initial intent was agreed upon, except, of course, they want us to continue to pay the taxes. So in this particular agreement, I will do approximate numbers because the taxes will go from about $8,400 to $8,840, and then we would also pick up the winter taxes, which are due by December 31st, to the amount of $2,700, and that would cover our option period. We should have some notification from the Department of Natural Resources. There's going to be an event in Lansing on the 12th, of which I hope to be in attendance at. They will be announcing the grants awarded this particular program. So we're getting very close here, folks, and we need to kind of keep going forward with this. So that is what is before you. Nothing else has changed on this. The price and everything is still the same, and I'm looking to have the board authorize me to move forward with this. I need a motion to move
I have a
forward.
question for you, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Let's just say hypothetically that on December 12th, we do not receive the award of the grant.
Mm-hmm.
So as of December 12th, we know that we're not going to be able to buy the property, at least this year.
Or through that process.
Or through that process.
Correct.
Does this bind us to still pay the winter taxes, even though we may not want to
Yes,
continue
it
with the
does.
property?
Yes.
Okay.
That was something that came up and was the only change that was fairly steadfast on.
It's considered a non-refundable deposit.
All right, and the terms of the length of terms of the option is when? When does it run out?
When the
90 days.
Well,
90
the
days
option's
after
90
grant
days after
notification.
grant notification.
Okay, so in February or in March, it's going
We
to
can-
be void.
We could execute, if we decide to execute, okay, then it takes us into the next phase, which is all dictated 100% by the Department of Natural Resources process.
Okay.
So we're covered on that end of it. And at that time, we'll have another conversation.
Okay.
We'll have a conversation on the 12th. Okay,
Yes, I
one
hope
way or
so.
the other.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? All right, I'm looking for motion to allow the supervisor to move forward with the agreement. Pardon? I'll sign it.
Did you already?
No.
So you need authorization.
Yes, I need authorization to sign. Mr. Roman?
Motion to approve the option to purchase agreement for the Pollock property and to authorize the supervisor to sign.
Thank you. Support? Motion, who's giving support?
I'll support.
Mr. Lilly is supporting. A motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you. Hopefully we'll have some really good news. And just so you know also, for those who may not have known, how many points did we go up?
55 points.
We went up 55 points on our,
There was some on the table then still.
yes, there was.
Our goal was to get to 50.
And I'd like to thank
That's awesome.
Dan for his action in this. We decided, there was some conversation that we had with our organization, which is the police, White Lake Township Police Foundation, and the youth that are involved in it would be, make a long-term commitment to do some sort of caretaker for this facility should it comes to light. And what more appropriate than to have our youth in our community see the value of what we're doing and be the caretakers of it and try and teach them to be good stewards of the land. So, and that was a good interjection of thought, and I think it'll work out favorably, and we'll all see what the future holds for us,
Yep.
folks.
On the 12th, that's when we find out.
It'll be on the 12th, yeah, so. Okay, the other FYI, kind of out of order, is Mr. John. I didn't anticipate you being here, but I'm glad you're here.
Seen that on the agenda.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got this cold too.
Oh, geez.
I'm glad you're here.
And we were not in the same deer blind over the weekend, I guarantee you.
It seems inevitable we're
Yeah.
gonna get sick.
Yeah.
I know, it's coming in all directions.
All directions.
This is just an FYI. When I first came into office 2 years ago now, I can't believe it's already been 2 years. There was something that always concerned me in all communities, and that is that we have safe and adequate housing for all individuals in the community. And that's not just the persons that have the option of owning and the privilege of owning their own home, but individuals that are renters in our community that have to rent a home because perhaps they can't afford one, or they're just that's not their lifestyle. They are a renter. But they deserve protection under the law, so to speak. And we've looked at other communities around us, and one of our communities directly to the east, Waterford, of which we seem to pick up a lot of things out of, Aaron. And I've had experience in my own business affairs and manners with their rental ordinance, and as a landlord of apartments, I thought it was very fair and very equitable, and it made a lot of sense. It protected my tenants, it protected me as a landlord, and it gave me a certificate of operation for my particular facility. We'll get into all the nuts and bolts of this as it comes forward, but I'm going to tell you that John has worked tirelessly, and I mean tirelessly, at this. And we've had multiple meetings in my office, working lunch meetings, because that seemed to be the only time we could always seem to get together. Of course, you throw a sandwich out there and you'd be surprised how you can track. I know what I can do with a muffin.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But it was very helpful in his dedication, and Jason and Mike and Sean and Jason and I, and everybody's kind of had a little bit of an input in the building department, Brent. We're trying to come up with something that's fair and equitable so that we can continue to have safe housing in our community. It'll be a little different. It'll be something a little out of the ordinary, but it is going to assist us in maintaining a quality of life here for persons that rent in our community. If you were to ask anyone in the building/code enforcement end of Waterford what difference it made in their community, they will tell you significant. Because it now gives the township the tools in the box to push a matter if need be. This was really enforced to me by some incidents we had, which I will not name the establishment at this time, that photographs were given to me that I would not let my dog live in these facilities. They were some of the grossest things I've ever seen, and people were living in this filth. And they were living in filth. And this is just completely uncalled for in this day and age, and a landlord has a responsibility to provide clean and secure housing. It may not be the Ritz-Carlton, but I'm going to tell you this looked like something out of a fourth world country. It was disgusting, and we have the pictures. And we'd be happy to share them with any board member that would like to see them. And this was another driving reason. Because when you have a sloppy home like that, you tend to have sloppy people. Sloppy people sometimes are careless. It starts one thing or another. Next thing you know, the fire department's making a call out there because something went south. So it's just one of those things that we want to try to make sure that we try to stay up on. So John, my hat's off to you. You did a great job and great service to the township, and I look forward to you for getting this through. Next year we'll get this brought before the board.
Once we get it past Lisa.
Yeah, once we get it past Lisa.
Oh,
yeah.
my.
I was waiting. I was waiting.
That's the roadblock.
From now.
And once we get it,
In my defense,
oh, here we go.
at the last meeting we had, the decision was made, we're not rushing through this, we need to do it right, let's have another meeting. So I put it aside for the next meeting. And then all of a sudden, 2 days before agenda deadline, I get, can you get this on the agenda? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
We were pretty
So
well
in my
wrapped up.
defense, there was some miscommunication
There was a
there.
little bit. So we'll get it worked out. But I wanted to make the board and the residents aware that we're aware of these things. And John, you're going to have to pull those pictures up, and we're going to have to share them a little bit, because I think this was the pièce de résistance. It was it. Okay, it was. Once I saw that, I just. Well, when you see it, Mike, you'll draw your own conclusion. Okay. So that being said, I appreciate all the work, and we'll move forward with that.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
If could, this is going to include apartments as well as single-family homes that are
Correct.
being rented?
Yeah, any non-homestead home.
What about the definition, if you're spending a night in a hotel or a motel, it's actually living quarters, or is going to extend?
They're extended to that.
To motels and hotels?
I'm going to say that there was a certain group that was the catalyst for this.
Okay.
Okay.
And is this going to extend to industrial and commercial as well, or is it just residential?
This is residential at this
Okay.
point in time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we want to try to move forward with it. And there will be a lot of things that we'll get you once we get it past Lisa. We'll get it.
Well, and one of the things we talked about at the last meeting that we were looking into was the Airbnbs, because a lot of the communities that already have rental ordinances are considering revisions in light of the Airbnbs.
Airbnb is a little unique because it's typically a normal person's home that they go on vacation and leave it to somebody else for the next week.
Not
So it's-
necessarily, it could be somebody's home to rent to Airbnb.
Period. There are persons that do that.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, there's an increasing number of those.
Okay.
Would it still be homesteaded though?
Generally, they're not homesteaded.
They shouldn't be. They
shouldn't
should be in the name of a corporation to protect the individual, but they may be.
So we will be able to identify some of these things throughout the township as time goes by, and we'll set up a program that'll effectively monitor these types of things as much.
I just hope the administration is being mindful that normally the business doesn't swallow these costs, so they get passed on to the tenant.
Right.
And so I'd hate for it to be a major
No,
pass-through.
no, these, there has not had really any effect in Waterford, and we're going to mimic what they're doing. I mean, this is not a money-making venue. This is try to cover our costs, but more importantly, provide that level of public safety in our community, which in turn, I mean, these things all snowball.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we have an event where someplace was in total trashness, and we had one of our first responders exposed to bed bug larvae on his shoes, and took him home. I won't go into the rest of the story, but it's not good. Okay, so there are reasons that we need to take and move this type of ordinance forward. Our community is growing. We are going to see a number of a major increase in rentals here in the next couple of years. We're going to have 80 units down at Cooley Lake Road and Union Lake Road. That we'll probably start out at that. And then there's a number of units that are going to be on preserve of Hidden Lake. I think there's a number of rentals on the north end of that. Now, these are unlikely to be issues, but nonetheless, we still need to look out for them.
Are we in trustee comments?
No, not yet. I'm just talking about that. Okay. I don't get the floor all the time. So I'm rolling.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm glad, my only comments is I'm glad to hear that it's for safety and not a money-making venue. So I hope it's not exactly like our neighboring communities, because I'd have some concern there. So I have a lot of questions, but I want to see it first before all my questions. Because I'm familiar with our neighboring communities.
Liz, I have had, how many conversations have I had with John? It cannot by law be a money-making venture. It's simply to recover costs.
Recover costs. So we'll get into it when the proper time comes, and I'll present you, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that. The other item that we have, and Mr. Lynn and I want to talk about a little bit, is the Mojave Cantina liquor license discussion. That's the restaurant that will be coming hopefully soon. You know, if I have to wait for a taco any longer, I'm going to be in trouble.
Well, we got a new one, Union Lake you can get.
Yeah, I know. It's a different kind of taco. So, but Mr. Lilly, you care to elaborate?
I just want to elaborate a little bit. I know there's been discussion about the possibility of a Mexican restaurant in the facility coming to White Lake, and I wanted to let the board know as part of this package, and evidently the gentleman is buying the complex. He's spending money for a hook to water and sewer. I don't know where the project really stands, other than Brent had indicated to me that it could be 8 months away. But this gentleman is in the process now of moving forward to make a substantial investment in the community. And I wanted the board to know that we have a liquor license request in the clerk's office that the police chief has already cleared them as far as a background check, but I have not brought and didn't want to bring the liquor license request to you as of the moment, but I wanted the board to be aware of the fact that there is a request pending. I know seems like from past discussions that the board has made, go back to the Root restaurant, that I think it was the feeling of the board that people that made substantial investments in the community, that they would be strongly considered for a license. So I just wanted to bring that before the board, because I think there needs to be some direction for both Sean and Aaron for working with these people, that they're not going to waste all this money on this complex and then not be told that they're not going to have a liquor license. So I just want the board to be aware of that at this point, and maybe there can be some discussion on your support, willingness to make this go smoothly at the end, but strictly an informational item at the present time. So.
Well, I myself look forward to it. I think it'd be a nice amenity in the community. We've all talked about having other options, dining options. It's one of the things when I talk to persons out on the street, it's when are we going to get more restaurants? I mean, I hear that 100,000 times. So, so I believe that it's long overdue, and it would be nice to see on the 59 corridor. And it'll be a utility improvement for the community, and There's talking about the fire suppression in the entire building, I think now, and so it'll be done.
They're showing an FDC, so they're gonna, I'm anticipating they're gonna suppress it.
Okay, so we're talking about, being done right, and this particular group is, they have a restaurant, Clausen? Is it Clausen with the other?
Livonia.
I believe so.
I always said it was Livonia.
No, I think it's Clausen.
Oh.
And we're already in Michigan, one of the, couple years running, they're one of the best Mexican restaurants around. So hopefully we'll pick up on that.
So we don't have to drive to the neighboring community anymore.
No, we can stay in our own backyard.
All right.
So
I don't have an issue with the liquor license. I mean, you need a margarita.
Yeah, you have to have a margarita. It's a taco without
That's why I don't go to El Patio.
burrito, yeah. So I believe that we anxiously anticipate seeing something come forward. He can't get those sewers hooked up fast enough and get the ball rolling there, Mr. Potter. So
He's in the process.
Now we just need a Carrabba's and an Outback, and we'll be in great shape.
We'll be in business.
Yeah.
Next spring.
Next spring.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Anything else you want to add to that,
I
Mr.
just
Luke?
wanted to make sure this board was well aware of that. I didn't want to bring an application 2 or 3 months from now, or even next month's possibility that the board was not understanding that this gentleman is making
Oh, yeah,
a
he's making
substantial investment.
considerable. Yeah.
And they're going to be looking forward to obtaining a license.
Mr. Sapatoris is aware that Mr. Lilly was bringing this tonight for discussion and appreciated it because he is still many months away. He told me 8 or 9 months away from being able to open the doors if everything goes well, because he's got quite a bit of work in the building to do after the site work's done. And so I think he was, I don't know if nervous is the word, but I mean, he's going to feel better about this all, getting some preliminary indication that you would be, if all goes well, supportive. And I mean, I would have.
I think we're anxiously awaiting it.
Yeah. And I believe we have 6 in quota, didn't you say?
6. Yeah, we have 6.
That, obviously is assessed with the census in, 2020. So all indications are we'll be picking maybe a couple more up. I don't know, Terry would know how that works better than I would, but so.
Okay, moving along. Trustee comments.
Oh, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to point one thing out. I think there's a couple individuals here that like to speak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Right?
Congressman-elect.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the appropriate time for that, but she's been here since 7.
Oh, by all means, absolutely. Stand and be recognized.
No problem. It was just 2 weeks ago. Like, Mr. Supervisor and members of the Board of Trustees, my name's Haley Stevens. I am your Congresswoman-elect in Michigan's 11th District. I will be replacing Dave Trott. We take the swearing in, the oath on January 3rd. So up until then, we're in this transition. I've already had a meeting with Congressman Trott on the transition. It is going very smoothly. The one thing to note is I will not be moving into his office space in Troy. It's actually already been leased out. So we're looking for something maybe a little bit more proximate here in the district. And my office, we'll have a focus on constituent services and a pretty large in-district presence, and that's part of why I'm here today. I am an economic development professional, someone with a workforce background that spent a lot of time with our manufacturing community, and I have a lot of respect for the work that you do. I've obviously been listening to the meeting tonight, and we've got several dozen communities that comprise Michigan's 11th district. We're a suburban district, a robust and healthy and growing district. We want to keep on that trajectory, and I truly want to be an effective and responsible partner, a collaborator with all of you. One of the federal posts that I held prior to running for office was a White House appointment in the U.S. Department of Commerce in the Economic Development Administration. And the Economic Development Administration is a grants-making agency. They do largely public-private partnerships. They have some public works dollars. They'll even fund an economic development impact study if you wanted to look at something in the community. And I mention that to you as just one example of, a way in which we could work together. I've obviously been seeing you and hearing you tonight very thoughtfully go over your budget and some city or township expenditures. And I share share that approach, which is the effective utilization of taxpayer dollars for intended outcomes for the health and well-being of our communities. And so this is just the beginning. It begins on January 3rd. I'm proud and honored to be serving in the United States Congress and representing our community. I really believe that this is going to be an all-of-community effort, and in part, Washington kind of drives people crazy because it's like a dysfunction we're all paying for with our taxpayer money. And I don't think I can fix the whole place, but I can certainly work to make it work for us here locally, and by exercising the opportunity to draw down on federal resources. We don't oftentimes need a lot of top-down assistance, but the roads is a great example. You pay your taxes at the state level and the federal level. When the time comes, we should be able to access those monies rather than having to pass millages or things along those lines. I'm also a public education advocate. I know we've got great schools here in Oakland County. I want to continue to support our schools, our workforce, the job training, certainly the educators who, dedicate their life to such a noble profession. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, my name is Haley Stevens. I was born in Rochester Hills. I live in Rochester Hills today, just south of Hamlin. That's a little part of Rochester Hills that's in our district. And wishing you all and your families a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much for attending the meeting.
Yes.
We appreciate
It's
that.
not the last you'll see of me.
Okay, that's good.
Or my team.
Awesome.
You might regret those words.
That's okay, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, on to trustee comments. Andrew Voorhees.
On behalf of the Parks and Recs and the Parks and Path promoters, which consists of Rhonda Grubb, Jean-Philippe Lowe, Pauline Wentworth Smith, Pete Pincinato, Deb Darren, CJ Broadett, and myself, we'd like to thank the taxpayers of White Lake for supporting our millage back in November, or still in November. We will continue to be good stewards of your tax money because we're still working on money from our last millage. And the Parks and Rec Committee consists of Rhonda Grubb, Jean-Philippe Lowe, Deb Darren, Marie Carlock, and myself. Amy, I'm sorry to hear that you're leaving, but onward and forward, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
Okay. I want to start out by thanking BFW Post 4156 for hosting our board in the community for a ceremony and a lovely luncheon on Veterans Day. And they also hosted homeless veterans on this past Saturday on the 17th, and a couple of us were there, and it was a wonderful experience, and I want to thank them for that as well. The library board meeting was yesterday, and at that meeting, instead of, where's the date? The 28th of this month, they bid farewell to Treasurer Joe Fennell. He's moved, so they appointed a new board member, Beth Rabus, so welcome to her. And I want to mention No Shave November for the police department. If you would like to support them, you can purchase a paper beard for $1. They'll put it up in the post, in their department, and it goes to 3 families, right, Chief? You're going to support 2 families for Christmas, and so I'd encourage everyone to participate in that. The White Lake Township tree lighting is December 7th from 6 to 8 at Fisk Farm, and it's our 10th annual, so it's a big deal. Hope everybody is going to make it, and we'll do a few new fun things this year. Keep it traditional as well for the nice family tradition that we all enjoy. And I'm, of course, looking for lots of volunteers needed for that night. It's solely put on by volunteers, sponsorships, and donations. So it's a big undertaking, and we need a lot of you to participate. So you can email me. You can email the committee, which is White Lake Township Tree Lighting at gmail.com. Or we have a Facebook page, which is White Lake Township Christmas Tree Lighting. I also want to mention part of that event is a coloring contest and a gingerbread house contest that's going on beforehand. Those entries can be dropped off at the library on December 5th. There'll be prizes, and it's fun, and the kids get to be announced at the event, and So please participate. It's just kind of a fun activity to lead up to the event. Thank you for the sponsors that have already participated. Sponsorship is still welcome, of course. So if you'd like to sponsor, please get in touch with me. And I want to thank Congressman-elect Haley Stevens for joining us this evening. Welcome to White Lake. Thank you. And happy Thanksgiving to all. Be safe. I feel truly blessed to be able to serve this community, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, I was able to attend the Veterans Day ceremony with a couple of board members here. Mr. Colwell gave a great speech. I don't know how you do it, come up with all kinds of stuff to say. It'd be tough to, but you did a great job. Looking forward to Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. And we didn't have any planning commission meetings, so nothing to report there. But thanks. That's it.
Mr. Lilly.
I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and I want to thank Amy again for her professionalism and thoughtfulness, and let her know that Kathy and I are going to miss her.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I had mentioned earlier in the night that I attended a meeting today of very wealthy people that are looking to invest in this state for the cannabis law that is going to be passed, that the voters allowed to take place for the, and they call it adult marijuana law. It's attracting a great deal of out-state money and out-of-country money even in anticipation of windfall profits here in this state. And this community is going to be under some pressure to participate in that and not opt out. And so everyone should get their ideas together as to whether that would be beneficial to the township or not, because we're going to be asked to make some modifications here in the township. That being said, happy Thanksgiving to all my fellow residents here in White Lake Township. Thank you, Congresswoman, for attending. That was very impressive. Thank you very much. And thank you, board members, for a great year.
Mr. Roman.
Same things. Everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Those of you that are going to travel safely. Amy, thanks for all your years of service.
Yes.
And best of wishes in your future endeavors. That's all I had, Rick.
Amy, again, I won't be able to get to say, do you got it, Amy? You got that?
I got it.
I'm going to have to reprogram myself.
I know.
It's your dedication has been exemplary to the community, and we really appreciate everything. Wish you well with whatever you choose to pursue. Okay. I would like to thank all of the residents out there for your continued support for this community. We had our election in November, and some of our precincts had record turnouts. We received very strong support even in our primary. Our primary was exceptional. We had excess of 70% support for our police and fire millages. We had good support. I can't remember the exact number on the library. It was 60-some percent for the, the library was what? 60-some percent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then just
Parks and Rec.
52.
Library was primary, Parks and Rec.
Right. And then Park and Rec was in the same,
Yep,
did
50,
well.
yep, yep.
So it's our responsibility as a township board to try to utilize those funds appropriately and provide the best services that we can. We thank you for this opportunity to be here, and you've put us here, and hopefully we will continue to do that type of job for you in the future. Interesting thing that you hit on, Mike, there was this weekend, last week, I believe Thursday through Saturday, was the cannabis convention in Las Vegas.
Yes, it was.
Over 25,000 attendees.
Yeah.
This has turned into an industry unto itself, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to unfold and play in our community. And we will have a little bit of time to make some decisions, but we need to make the right ones. So, with that, I say, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Congresswoman-elect, for showing up. Appreciate that. We take our jobs very seriously here, and sometimes we pick apart the minutia, but sometimes that's how we come to the best solution. So,
Plan on staying long.
so thank you all. God bless, and have a great evening. Looking for a motion.
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Looking for support.
Support.
Motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.